Well, hello there, beautiful teachers. In today's show, webinar, live video, we're going to go through my new method book, which is called Piano Paintbox. Here's one of the levels of it. We're going to be going through all the details about what it's about, how it works, and give you an overview, because I know sometimes we're curious about new method books, but it's really hard and sometimes really overwhelming to figure out what is it? And it's because there's often a lot to unpack in a method book, so it's difficult for people to give you a very simple answer on that. So this is my attempt at that, to give you a full overview of the method books, who they're for, what it's about, how it works, and then you can see whether it's right for you, whether it's right for particular students you have, whether it's totally not your jam, and that will not offend me whatsoever. Hey Carrie, so good to see you here. And anyone else who's joining, do say hi. I'm happy to stick around as well to answer any questions. This week is Vibrant Music Teaching's special 8th birthday. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any extra questions, especially because of the occasion. I often do a live on the birthday, but I'm actually traveling a lot in the upcoming weeks, so I couldn't fit in one on the actual birthday just because there's a lot going on. But I'm happy to stick around and answer any general questions, any totally off-topic questions, anything random that you're just curious about. Happy to stick around and answer those after we go through a little bit of the method book. Welcome, Michael, so good to see you, and Juliet and Valerie, hello, welcome. Okay, so we're talking about Piano Paintbox, so I'll show you once more before I switch over to my screen that this is what one of the books looks like. This is level C. There's levels A to C, and there's a teacher guide version of every single one. So that's 6 books essentially, but the teacher guides are the same content. I'm going to show you previews of inside all the way through as well. Kelly, thank you for the happy birthday to VMT. Love it. And lovely to see Teresa here and Beth. So good to get to hang out in real time. Okay, I'm going to go through as fast as I can while being really clear a little bit about Piano Paintbox. Do ask me questions as we go through. So this is my new method book. I wasn't sure I'd ever write a method book, but I was prompted to do so by a gap that I had in my own studio. There's a lot of fantastic method books out there that I really love, but there was a need that wasn't being fulfilled. So first, just an overview of the method, and then later on we'll go through step by step through all the books, and I'll show you example pages from each. They're also, you can look at the example pages, you can look at a video flip through of the whole books on the shop page as well. But this all started with a question, and this was back around, I think, February, maybe March, is when this journey began for me. With a question just in my wondering time, which was, what if a method book didn't have reading as the central goal? Because I'd been doing a lot of research on different types of method books and historical method books, was doing a video about that. This is where it all sparked out of. And often method books, what we mean is piano reading method books. That's what we're shortening. But what if it wasn't the central goal? What if we didn't start from reading? Now, I'm not saying what if we played by ear instead. I actually am talking about a reading method book in a way. But I'm saying, what if we didn't start there? What if we didn't put it at the forefront of everything? That's where I started with this. And what if we made playing the center instead? This might sound like a minor shift to think about playing music instead of reading music, but it actually affects so many little details of how a book is put together. And if you look at a lot of method books you use, not all, but a lot, their central goal is reading. The playing is circumstantial to the reading progression. And I wanted to flip that around. Could we create a better piano method for young students? Because this is where the hole was for me. I have pretty great books. I mean, there's always gaps in everything, and there's always things you disagree with versus a method book author for everything. But I have a pretty solid preference of various method books for, I'd say, definitely students over age 8. There are preschool method books out there, but I've never found the perfect one for me, and I really have explored them all. So, how could I create a better method book for students from starting from playing? So this is what led to what I came to call Piano Paintbox. And we're going to unpack that today. I'll talk you through exactly how it works so you can see whether it's right for you or you want to try it out. Now, if you have questions as we go through, please do chime in with them. I'm happy to answer as we go, and also happy to answer any questions that I don't get to at the end. So feel free to go off topic as well. Just start your comment with the word question so I can make sure to come back to everything. So reading. I said we were starting with reading, but we're not. Or I wasn't in creating this. I wasn't starting from reading. And that's what led me to include reading in the way that I did in these books. So very simply put, level A, it's a whole book, is entirely pre-reading, no staff at all. Level B is a simplified staff. It's 1 line stave and then 2 line stave as you go through the book. And level C is on the grand staff. There is no single stave reading. So there's nothing that is like just for the right hand and the grand staff is not shown. Everything is actually showing to a grand staff, as it were, even when the staff is invisible, because we're pre-reading. Now remember, reading was not my primary goal. That's not the point. And that's why I've included quite a lot of pre-reading for this young beginner method. I don't want you to get me wrong here. Preschoolers, 3-year-olds even, sure, they can read on the staff. But should they? That's the question. And I think maybe our industry as a whole, or definitely me, in maybe 10 years ago or so, I really got tripped up on this idea. Because there are method books out there who start on the staff from day one, because there's no reason not to, because people can do it. And because you realize that they can, that you don't need pre-reading, you think about cutting it out, because it was only there to get to the grand staff anyway, wasn't it? But that's not what pre-reading is for in Piano Paintbox. Starting with pre-reading means we can play a wider range of notes and learn pieces faster. And remember, playing is my goal here. I want students to play a lot of repertoire. I want them to be able to learn pieces fast. And I don't want preschool lessons, as much as I love games and all that other stuff, to be entirely away from the piano. I don't think they have to be. I think we need to get kids on the piano a bit more. You know, not for a whole lesson just sitting at the bench. That's one issue. But sometimes we go too far the other way. And we don't have them playing enough music. So that's why I started with pre-reading. It's not because they can't. It's because I don't think it's the best route to them playing confidently as quickly as possible. Rote pieces then. So I'd say there's a higher proportion of rote pieces to reading pieces than you'll find in most method books, even ones that use rote pieces. And that's because, again, this is designed for young beginners. Like, I would say, under 7s, okay? And to get them playing successfully, rote pieces should be a major part of the mix, not just an every so often thing. So in level A and B, there's 1 rote piece to every 2 reading pieces. And in level C, that reduces because they're capable of both reading and playing wide music. You know, it's all kind of coming together at that stage. The rote pieces that I've included are also maybe easier and quicker and shorter. So again, a lot of fabulous rote pieces that I love for the 8 and over crowd are too hard for young students, and they really need very simple rote pieces at first because they're still navigating learning to navigate the piano for quite a while. So our initial rote pieces in Piano Paintbox are extremely simple, and they help students to learn piano geography. They're actually helping them to find their way around. This lets them build up their ability to remember longer patterns as they progress through the books. So around the middle of level B is where you start to have fairly substantial rote pieces. But up until that point, they're short, they're pretty quick to teach, and they are really based around the skill of navigating the piano that the student is going through at that time. Improvisation. A frustration of mine is, well, some method books don't include improvisation at all. Some do, but not enough for me. So I like to improvise in every lesson. There are some exceptions, of course, but my goal is every lesson. That's why in these books, there's one improvisation pattern to every 2 reading pieces, same ratio as the rote. So another way to think about that is a group of 4 would be 2 reading pieces, 1 rote piece, and 1 improv. They all kind of go together in a way. These are easy, quick. You can do them even if you're not an amazing improviser, so that you can improvise in every lesson. Because we wouldn't teach English without letting kids converse with each other. It's bananas to think about sitting a child down who's never spoken a language and teaching them to read that language and to memorize passages in that language without letting them chat in that language. And improvisation is the chatting of music. There are included accompaniment parts for you as the teacher, but you don't have to use them. I always suggest and point out the key if it's not super obvious. So there's not one in D Dorian, but if it was, I would say use the pattern below or improvise in your own way, make up your own accompaniment pattern in D Dorian. Composition then, also included in the book. And these pages are mostly blank space, but they're important to include because if we try to include composition as a supplement, we end up leaving it out. And students need to be able to create their own music. So these composition pages give them ownership. They let you have a moment to really connect with your student because you're not actively teaching, you're exploring together. And that's really good for developing that relationship with your student. And they let you check understanding. Sometimes in a student's composition, you'll realize something they had misunderstood from how you were teaching them. Written theory then, what about that? Well, the thing I wanted to achieve with the written theory in these books was, yes, to include it, because I think a little bit of colouring or writing for a young beginner is worth it, but it's not a lot, and it's very much as quick as possible to do. So they're very simple and quick pages. They're not overly gimmicky, because they're just about a quick activity we can use to reinforce that information in a different way. So there's no instruction on these pages at all. It's just reinforcement. And it's fast enough that you can do it in the lesson because this is supposed to be done in the lesson. It's not homework. And you can also split these up. So most of the theory pages have like a whole bunch of a similar activity, like identifying long and short sounds, for example. And so you can do 2 of those examples, 2 of those exercises, do something else, come back to it. It gives you a moment to get away from the piano, go back to the piano, and build that rhythm of changing activities often. What about the teacher duets then? They are with every reading piece and some rote pieces. Nothing revolutionary there. A lot of method books include teacher duets. They're a fantastic thing to have with your pieces. I tried my hardest to strike the balance between sight readable for the teacher, but not just incredibly dull for the teacher to read. But they're also not challenging to play. And I also included a very consistent 2-bar intro, except if there's an anacrusis, of course. But this means students can get used to this time they have to hear the key, to hear the tempo, to hear some of the rhythms that are coming up in their piece, and then join in. So they get used to acclimatizing themselves to that music before they have to start. Also, tiny note, but let me know in the chat if this annoys you. They are always on the correct side of the page. In some method books I use, I'll be playing a part that's on the secundo side of the student, but my written part is on the right-hand page in the book, or vice versa. I'm playing at the treble side of the piano, and my teacher duet is for some reason the other side. Now, sometimes there's no space, but sometimes I've seen books where there is space, and I don't know why they put it on the wrong side. So that's just a personal little thing of mine, but they're always on the correct side, the side you would actually sit to read the piece. Technique then. There's none. Well, sort of. I made the decision not to include any specific technique exercises in these books. It's not because I don't believe in technique. It's because I believe for the first year and a half that you would be in these first 3 levels of this method book, with a young beginner, all you should be trying to do is establish good posture, strong fingertips, use of arm weight, and a rounded hand shape. That's my whole goal list. And you are the one in that room. You're the one who's able to assess whether they have good posture. You're able to adjust things. You're able to come up with different strategies based on how they are physically moving, how they are learning, how they're progressing with their technique. All you actually need from me, from a method book, is repertoire. You just need them to be playing pieces that they can successfully play and learn quite quickly, so that you have the room to develop their technique. It's not that I don't believe in technique exercises or more detailed technique teaching or scales or anything else. It's that in the scope of these books, that it's all too early. And it's also that those initial pages in method books which show a picture of a student sitting at a piano correctly and go through the finger numbers and things like that, a teacher teaches that better. We don't need a book to do that. These are not books that are designed for self-learners or parents to teach their kids. They're for teachers who know what they're doing, who have a way they're going to teach that anyway, and who do not need a picture to be shown to the student in the beginning of the book. And they are clutter-free. There's actually a lot of empty space in these books. This gives us room to breathe. It leaves the student no room for distractions. So if you have a student who easily focuses on this and that instead of the sheet music they're supposed to be reading or whatever they're supposed to be looking at on the page, these books are designed to focus their attention where they're actually supposed to be looking. There are no info boxes because in my experience those are actually for teachers. So they're written to the student. Like, on this page we're meeting a crescendo sign. Here's what a crescendo means. Those are really there. I mean, the student can use them to remember at home, but really the teacher's going to teach them what the crescendo sign means. The info box is there more as a prompt for the teacher to go, oh hey, I need to remember to teach them about crescendos here, or I need to teach them about crescendos a few pages before this, or whatever the case may be. So that's why there's a separate teacher guide. Those notes should be directed to you because that's who they're really for. The separate teacher guidebooks give you the context you need with little notes and little bits and pieces from me added onto the pages, but they keep the student editions free of extra stuff. Okay, so I'm going to show you some preview pages of what the inside of the books look like. If you want to take a look at these in your own time, you can take a look at the Piano Paintbox pages for each of the books and the preview pages are there, and there's also a video where I kind of speed flip through the book so you can see the whole way through in one go. Okay, this is a page from level A, so we're going to go through a few level A pages. I'll show you the student book and the teacher book. Obviously the preview text won't be there. This is one of the busiest pages. So it has, on the left you'll see an improvisation page. So it has an example in this case of what it might sound like when you follow the directions. At the top of the improv pages there's kind of a little story to set the scene and activate the imaginations. And then on the right you'll see the rote piece, which in this case is Diving in the Black Sea. This one happens to have a rhythm part and a piano part that go together. So I can learn both parts and you can each do them and then swap. And it's super simple if you read that. It's just going down on the black keys and up. So this is right at the beginning of level A, and there's a QR code to the reminder video for them as well. Next up we have a reading piece. This is also level A, we're still in level A here. And this is an example of a pre-reading piece. So you'll see it's still left-right orientation. Didn't include any single-handed pieces that don't have that like orientation we're going to experience on the grand staff. And there are lyrics for every reading piece and almost every rote piece. There's also a keyboard map, and then they read by finger numbers. It includes the letter name for the first note, as you'll see there. So the point of this is that they can read it almost straight away, almost by themselves, because we want it to be easy for them to read. It's not going to become a crutch because we're not on the grand staff, and that actually would have gotten in our way because then they develop a habit of I always look for finger numbers that we then have to break. But if we stick with pre-reading, they can learn to read, learn to isolate their fingers and do all that stuff they need to do in an environment that's at a challenge level that's comfortable for them. Final example then from the student version of level A. This is a theory page. It happens to be a kind of rhythm clapping page. Some of them are colouring in, as you'll see in a second. And another of the rote pieces, this is a very simple one where they're really just learning to move between different F keys. Now we'll go to the teacher guide version of level A. So you'll see now we have green boxes. So this is what the teacher guide adds. It is still the exact same book underneath, but with just extra green boxes, which means you can keep the teacher guide version. It's not like a totally separate book. You can keep it as your version, your backup that you have in your studio and your reference version. So it can just be your edition is the teacher version and theirs is the student version, because you still have the same page numbers, you still have everything to look at that the student sees, just with the very clearly differentiated green text that's just for you. Another example of a teacher guide page. This one has one of our suggested games boxes. Of course, if you're not a Vibrant Music teaching member, you can just ignore those, but they're there for those who are a member and want to use the books and have an easy reference to the perfect game to do on that page or subsequent pages. And the final example from level A teacher guide. This is another reading piece. Again, we have a suggested game there, but you'll see on the right page there's no teacher info there. So it's not heavily cluttered with stuff. You can still use it as a reference. It's still clean enough that you can use it in a pinch if a student forgets their book or something like that. Let's go on to level B then. So this is, again, the student edition, which is what we're looking at because there's no green stuff on the page. We've got a rote piece on the right, which I think is a good example of something a student at this level would never read, but it is easy to play because it's all chromatic. And then on the left, you'll see an improvisation, again with accompaniment example, but if you want to just do your own thing with your own chords, that's always fine. Those are there for the people who don't feel confident doing that. And again, there's the little setup story at the top there. This improvisation is called Jellyfish Jelly, and it has a keyboard map this time. So when it's useful for the student to have a visual representation of the keys they're going to be playing, I include a keyboard map like that. And then there's another rote piece. As someone mentioned in the chat, there's a QR code for the reminder video for any rote pieces. This is a reading piece in level B. So this is a single stave. Later in the book, there's 2-line stave. And this one is called Sweet Red Roses. You'll see quavers or eighth notes are included fairly early on in the books. There's no reason to shy away from them. They're not scary. They don't have to be difficult, I promise. And students are playing steps and skips and all sorts of things, but they're getting used to the feeling of that because they're able to read the finger numbers, so it's very accessible for them to read. This is the teacher guide of level B. Again, you've got your green notebook boxes there. You saw one of these pages before, but I didn't explain it. The start of every unit starts like this with this keyword picture, and it's kind of a milestone moment for students as they work through the books because they're colouring in the keys, and every time they're colouring more and more keys to build up to the full paint box of piano keys every time they encounter one of these pages. This is another reading piece, again in the teacher guide, and you'll see how I'm introducing different things on the page that I think is useful for teachers to note. If I were you, I would be keeping this teacher guide version and also writing in any notes as you teach the pieces, so that next time all you have to do is open up your copy and say, oh, last time my student had trouble with this, or I didn't think to mention that, and I made a note for next time, right? I showed this just to make it clear that occasionally a green box has to cover an illustration, but that's all it ever covers up. So again, as Laura said, you can own one copy that works as a backup student copy too. There's nothing in the way of a student using this book. There's just extraneous information they don't need, but it can act as a backup. Okay, level C then, where we're all going. So this looks a little bit more conventional. We're on the grand staff now, but we built up to this point so a student can launch right in. This is their first reading piece on the grand staff, and they can just read all over it. Now, what I don't do is make them name the notes right away. They're focused on intervals for the first 2 units of level C, and then the last 2 units we introduce landmark notes. So they're given necessary notes, like they're given the G there, they're given the first B in the left hand, they're given the notes that they need. They're no longer given a keyboard map, and they're given useful finger numbers when it's difficult for them to figure out from context. But the notation is nice and big, they can see the intervals that are going on. It's all on the grand staff rather than starting with a single stave, because I found that can be a hurdle for some students that they need to get used to then, and they get mixed up between the clefs and stuff. So I do like to start straight away on the grand staff. Then we've got another example of a theory page here. This is steps and skips. Again, very quick to do, and I would do like 2 or 3 of them. You're colouring them in, circling, or sorry, it's draw a star and draw a fish in this case. But you're gonna do that, I would do like 3 of them, then play a piece and go back and do 3 of them, so that you're going on and off the piano bench, getting some movement in as you go across the room to do a few, and you're reinforcing it in a better way too then. On the right you'll see a rote piece, Blueberry Blues, which is sort of much more involved, more going on at this stage in the rote pieces. They're not just about navigating the piano. By this stage the student has developed enough oral memory and ability to remember patterns that they can attempt a piece like this. This is an example towards the end of the book, not quite at the end, towards the end of the book, and you'll see there's no note name labels here. That's because by this stage they have been introduced to F landmarks, so that is how they're identifying these notes. They don't need the labels anymore. They do get to the note names. We just start from intervals so that they prioritize those over the note names. themselves to. Here's Blue Mountain from the teacher guide, just to show you that there are some folk songs included as well, with different names and slightly different lyrics, but they're like well-known folk songs. Yeah, to make it even easier to reinforce, yes, I am playing the correct notes because it sounds like this song. I know it's not all folk songs, because I think that can become a crutch and students can think that they can only read pieces that they know the sound of, but they are included mostly in level C and a little bit in level B. Here we have A for alligator, and again, this is the teacher guide version, so I pointed out like first crescendo in a piece so that you know, like, hey, this is new, we have meta crescendo on a theory page, but not in a piece, and things like that. This is a landmark page, so I introduce the C landmarks first for unit, and then the F landmarks in the last unit of level C. And it's just a simple page like this where they're going to draw in the landmarks again, because I know you're going to teach them and reinforce them in your own way, right? We don't need the instruction, we need the opportunity to teach, like the space, the freedom to teach this stuff. So Carrie asked me for the link earlier, I'll type it into the chat as well. colourfulkeys.ie/shop. And the second link, colourfulkeys.ie/paintbox, that is if you're ordering physical copies, and you can order there anywhere in the world, but particularly right now, if you're ordering in the US, that is the only way you can order the physical copies because of customs issues. And there's my email in case anyone needs it to get in touch with me later with questions, but I'm also happy to answer any questions right now. Thank you all for listening to a little bit about Piano Paintbox. Here they are physically. There's level C, that's what it looks like. I'll show you the inside. And they're all printed. The paper is nice and thick. I know you can't tell, but maybe you can from the sound. I feel like I could from the sound. The paper is nice and thick and really good quality. Printed really beautifully. They are printed on demand too, to save on waste, which means you do have to wait a few weeks for a delivery, but to me that's a fair trade for better environmental process of printing on demand rather than printing in bulk and storing lots and lots of cut up trees in a warehouse. This is the teacher guide version, so I'll show you them side by side so you can see they're slightly different. So you can easily see it's your version. You don't get mixed up and give your student your version. I'll show you that with level B. It's probably harder to see on camera, but the teacher guide version is darker, always. So yeah, this is level B. And she's beautiful. She's ever so slightly fewer pages than the other two levels, just because the way it worked out. But yeah, each unit is named after a colour, and that's how they start. And there's a keyboard page. Yeah. Great question, Shanda. I didn't think to put that in my presentation, but I had noted it on the page. There are no rhythm terms. There is nothing to translate because I have never said the word crotchet in the books. There's nothing. So there's the physical symbol, and you might match it to, like, you know, a 1 for 1 beat or something like that. There's representations, but I never use the words, so there's no US version necessary. Never said crotchet, never said, quaver, whatever else the other differences are. The only difference, I guess, is when I said colour, and it has a U in it, but I think that's dealable with, yeah? Like, I use plenty of American books. I use even ones that say quarter note, and I honestly don't care, but it definitely doesn't bother me if there's colour without a U in it as an instruction. I think that we can take that opportunity to talk about the different parts of the world and how different people do things. So yes, there are no conflict of language issues in the books. Yeah, it's a stepping stone towards reading on the staff. It helps them be able to work on a little bit of directionality, because pre-reading, sometimes people talk about doing pre-reading as a way to teach kids about the grand staff in an easier way. And I want to be very clear that that's not why the pre-reading is there. I don't think that works. I think it's easier to see directionality when there's lines to follow, right? But what is easier with pre-reading is we can put finger numbers on every note because we're not worried about building that as a crutch. And we can move kids all over the piano because it doesn't matter. Like, we can just tell them this is D now, and it's not a lie because there's no grand staff. So, yes, the single line stave gets them towards that. In the middle of level B, I stop labeling repeated notes with the finger number. So if it's like 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, I don't put the rest of the twos. So that they can start to at least say, okay, yeah, it's in the same spot. I can see that because of the line or the 2 lines, and therefore I can start to read that way. Thank you, Juliet. I appreciate that very much. That's certainly what I've attempted to create, and I think my main thing is it should be easy and fun from the start, but that shouldn't mean not playing enough on the piano. And I think I'm not naming or I don't have specific method books in mind, by the way, when I'm saying this. I'm not dissing anyone in particular, but some method books for preschoolers, where they fall down for me personally in my studio is, yes, they're really fun and creative and there's all that stuff, but then kids aren't even playing on the piano that much, and that gets in my way, and then sometimes the kids are literally asking, but when are we going to play on the piano? And then other kids will develop this habit of, oh, when we're on the piano, that's the hard time. I don't want to go to the piano. And that's a horrible association to have. So we need stuff that is easy to play right away on the piano. And that way we spend enough time there, as well as doing the fun games and getting up off the piano that I believe in too. Yeah, right? And that's great for my tweens, right? To be able to teach them a big, epic rote piece. Love it. That's great. That's exactly what they need. They need the challenge. They need to feel like they've accomplished something. They need it to sound rich and full and wonderful. A 3-year-old doesn't need that. A 4-year-old doesn't need that, right? So, yeah, the idea is that the rote pieces, you literally teach them in one go. And, in practicing these with students and all of that stuff that I've been doing, that's what I've been seeing. So especially the first pieces in level A, it's literally okay, it goes down like this and up like this. You're done, you did it. And then they get to practice that, and they're practicing going up and down and using that vocabulary, and that's enough, right? Because they're playing something. There also are, I didn't point that out, audio tracks the whole way through as well. There's a QR code in the front, which I won't show because obviously it's based on buying the book, but that takes you to a page where all the audio is, so that you can listen to the pieces, or your student can listen to the pieces. For some students that's really useful, and yeah, it just makes it easier and easier to learn. But my goal, as always, for the rote pieces is we shouldn't need the reminder videos. They are there. They are as easily accessible as possible. They're all already, by the way, for Vivid users, these are all already in the app, in the Vivid collection if you want to add them. And the rote pieces are there, the listening is there, but we shouldn't need them. The rote piece is too hard, or we've done too much of it, if we have to have the parent look at the reminder video at home. It should be a backup. It should be a plan B, not a plan A. If they practice on day 1 or day 2 or even day 3 of the week, I think they should still remember the rote piece. That's my goal. They do have to go to the website to listen to the audio tracks, Nicole. They're just on that page, but they are also in Vivid. So that's probably how you would use them. And then, yeah, they're all already where they're practicing. Anyway, Shanda, for the Ladybug piece and Blueberry Blues, for instance, do you have suggested fingerings? I saw lots of fun chromatic movement for the student. Yeah, what I would suggest to you for the rote pieces is watch the reminder video. There's also, very shortly, the courses will be out in Vibrant Music Teaching, so if you're a member, you can watch me go through and discuss every piece there as well. But for the rote pieces, watch the reminder videos that are meant for students, because you'll see how I teach it, because I'm breaking it down for them in the video. So every video starts with me playing the whole thing, And then I say, okay, we'll learn this part first, then we'll learn that part, so you can see exactly how I'm doing it, and it's an overhead piano view, so you can see the fingering as well. Sometimes it's noted on the score, but most often not, because it's often flexible. So like some cases in the teacher guide I'll also have noted, like Storm Clouds Clear is a good example when you look at the books. A student could play that with a single finger, with finger 2 of each hand, or with two hands and crossing over. Like there's multiple ways to do it, and I actually would want them to do it their way that they instinctively do it, if that makes sense. I don't want to put rules on that, especially at that stage. That's in Unit 1 of Level A. So yeah, I hoped so. Thanks, Shanta. Fantastic. Any other questions, anybody? I'm just checking if I have missed any. Oh yeah, I remember Carrie asked, you plan to continue the series for older students in the future? TBD. If there's enough demand. My idea for these books, for now anyway, is if a student graduates from level C, they could go forward into any other method book series and would be fine, because they've covered landmark F notes, landmark C notes, and reading intervallically. That's all you actually need to continue. So, for example, if it was to switch to Piano Safari, you could easily go to Piano Safari level 2 from here. If you were going to go to Piano Adventures with a student who needed a bit more reinforcement, I would go level 1. With another student, I might jump to level 2. But like in every method book, you would go to either 1 or 2, pretty much. Because that's where they all kind of end up at the end of a primer or level 1 if a primer doesn't exist. So that roundabout answered your question. For now, no. But maybe in future. What ages did you say these books are best for? It's aimed at 7 and under, what I would generally call a young beginner student. There's nothing on the book to say that, because I want you to be free to use it with anyone who you would like to go at a slower pace. If you have a lot of students who just don't practice, they need easy stuff. They need stuff that you can go through quickly, right? Even without practice. So that could be a 9-year-old, and that would be fine. I think an adult student might think, oh, these drawings are a bit kiddie, but any child should be fine and shouldn't notice anything that looks like there's nothing on it to say ages whatever, or preschoolers or young beginners. So yeah, I've left it open, but I've ideally designed it for my young students, 7 and under, even as young as 3 or however young you want to teach, as long as you are teaching in a way that's appropriate for 3-year-olds in general, right? The book won't do that for you. Youngest student, okay, I kind of answered your question, Beth, there too. 3 would be our youngest student we take, and therefore the youngest that I would start in these books. And yeah, that would of course include lots of games and activities from Vibrant Music Teaching. It wouldn't be just sitting on the piano working on these books, and I'd be going slower than I would with an older student, but the idea is that the material is very appropriate for ages 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and definitely an older student too if you have a need for it. Hope that helps. Okay, any other questions I missed, or add any questions now? As I said, happy to answer non-Piano Paintbox questions tier 2 at the end if anyone has burning issues or questions they want addressed, because I don't often go live here anymore, but happy to answer anything. Thank you all for being so lovely about the new books. So excited to finally have these out. It's not finally. Like, I did work on them quite quickly, but also the last stage of putting out a project is always like, I just want to get it out there, so I'm excited to get them into your hands. Yep, all composed by me, except, of course, the traditional folk songs. I mean, London Bridge or whatever. So I've thought about this. I'm open to your preference. My thought right now is no, because they're in the teacher guide. But if you feel strongly that you would prefer it to be a VMT roadmap on the site, that's certainly something we could put together. But yeah, let me know how you feel about it. My initial thought when I put these together was I won't do a roadmap for now because I'm already putting suggested games in the teacher guide, and that's probably a handier spot to look at because you're going to plan your lessons looking at the teacher guide. That's the intention anyway, but I'm always open to hearing how you use things and whether that wouldn't fit with your workflow and you would prefer something else. Okay, fantastic. I think I've got all the comments here. So again, you can check out the books at colourfulkeys.ie/shop. You can also find them, the physical hard copies, at colourfulkeys.ie/paintbox, which will forward you to a bookshop. It's like an online bookshop called Lulu, self-publishing things. If you haven't heard of it before and you think, hey, why am I here? It's because that's going to print and ship directly to you from the closest location. And right now we're not processing orders for most physical things that we can't ship within the US because of customs issues. So just to note that if you add them to your basket on the actual Colourful Keys store, it will cancel, like your order will disappear because we can't let that order go through, because otherwise you could be charged a huge customs fee. Like, that's the issue as it stands right now. That may change in future, but I'm just putting it out there in case it's confusing to anyone or they haven't heard about these issues, because I know there's a lot going on that we won't get into. We're not going to talk about that, but yeah, just wanted to mention that. Okay, don't see any more questions coming through, so I'm going to wrap it up there. Thanks so much for hanging out with me, and thank you so much to the VMT members who are here for the last 8 wonderful years, or however long you've been a member of Vibrant Music Teaching. There's more and greater things yet to come. I just today had a brainwave for a resource for next year, so we're keeping moving onward and upward. More resources, more things that are useful for your teaching, and it's such a pleasure and such a privilege to be able to be in this community with you, to be able to put it together for you, and here's to another fantastic year of VMT. Talk to you all soon.